Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where we dive deep into regional headlines and speak with leading policymakers and business leaders. I am Katie Jensen. On this episode, we hear from Richard Attias, the CEO of the Future Investment Initiative, or FII, often dubbed the Davos in the desert. It's the annual event where the world's most powerful leaders, business people and entrepreneurs come together to shape the future. On this episode, we ask him what it takes to craft events that define the global agenda, who the headline figures are for this year's gathering, and how FII is showcasing that Saudi Arabia not only deserves a seat at the global table, but is actively reshaping the conversation on the future of investment. Mr. Attias, thank you so much for joining us on Frankly Speaking today. Now, the 8th edition of FII is due to take place in Riyadh in just a few days' time. Of course, you've been involved right since the very beginning. Now, frankly speaking, at the time, there was a little bit of skepticism surrounding the event. Firstly, people wondered, does the world really need another forum like this? And secondly, there were questions about whether Saudi Arabia could actually pull it off. Tell me, what do you tell those skeptics today?
I don't want to be too pretentious, but I think we don't see any more skeptical people. But I would answer to potential skeptical people based on what I learned from my 30 years of being in total humility, the architect, the curator of influential platforms. When people come back every year, this is the answer. Because global CEOs don't have time to lose. Time is money for them. Because world leaders don't have time to lose. So they're not coming back to please me or to please my stakeholders. They're coming back because, number one, they find the great content, they are inspired, they realize that these platforms as FII are call to actions. They also make deals. It's not just about networking. It's really making deals. The past 7 editions of FII saw not just commitments, they saw the concretization of $128 billion of deals. So, and last but not least, COVID-19 has proven that in-person meetings are absolutely crucial. And despite the virtual or the hybrid formulas of conferences, people are coming back again, and even a bigger number. You know, last year we were 6,000 delegates. This year, despite the fact that for many people you need to become a member of the organization of the FII Institute, we just are approaching a number of 8,000 global CEOs, C-suites, entrepreneurs, and public figures. So we're not trying, to just create a conference to have an additional more conference. We really want to have an impact. And we are extremely selective on the topics, on the people who are joining this conversation. We want to be sure that they are committed, and they are committed all year long. So this is, I hope, the answer to your question. And we are very excited to see that the demography of our participants is really global. We have 30% coming from United States of America. We have 20+% coming from Europe. We have another 20% almost coming from Asia globally, including the Middle East. And we have a great number now starting to come from Africa and from Latin America. So it's a real global conversation.
Well, certainly people are committed to the event. You talked a little bit about the membership there. You're now charging people up to $15,000 US for a single attendee. The price doesn't come cheap. And yet, despite that, you have the incredible ability to be able to draw in global billionaires, business people, bankers, top politicians as well. You've had everyone from Tony Blair to Christine Lagarde over the years as well. Now, this year, there's been a real shift to a lot more of a focus on AI and technology. Tell me, what are the big topics this year that's different to previous years, and who are the main headline speakers that you think people are going to get particularly excited about?
First, allow me, Cathy, to come back to your first point. If you want to do a benchmark, we are by far the lowest membership in global international not-for-profit foundation. I just want to be precise on that, the lowest, because we're not looking for money, we're looking for commitment. So this is point number one. Point number two, yes, indeed, you're absolutely right. At the beginning of FII, the majority of our participants and delegates were coming from the financial sector, from sovereign wealth fund, private equities, and I would say the key old economy industries. This year, we are extremely happy to see that we have more and more people coming from the tech industries, including AI, because AI is everywhere, and AI is now. And AI is disrupting almost all industries and all sectors. But we have also a growing number of entrepreneurs, because if you ask me what I want the legacy of FII Institute to be, is to be really an inclusive platform, a bridge between global CEOs from the traditional economies and young entrepreneurs. And I'm very happy to see more and more entrepreneurs stopping me in corridors of the conference center and telling me, thank you. I say, why? Oh, thank you, because thanks to you guys and thanks to the FII conference the past 2 years, I was able to find an investor, and now my company is running, moving forward and growing. So I would say that, yes, we have more and more people coming also from different industries which were not expected, like sport industry, like the entertainment industry, like the cultural industry. And we see that, in fact, economic diplomacy has multiple faces. Economic diplomacy is also cultural diplomacy, sport diplomacy, entertainment diplomacy. And this is what is helping nations to collaborate, not just in geopolitics, but in geoeconomics.
FII is an international think tank. It's funded by Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, PIF, and you are aiming to organise summits that do make an impact on humanity. Tell me, how do you define and measure what this means in reality?
Yeah, just back to Saudi Arabia. I think the reason why this conference was born in Saudi Arabia is not just because it was inspired by the leader and by PIF. Saudi Arabia is definitely a global hub today, and it is, I would say, a catalyst between North and South and West and East. It is extremely well located if you look at the world map. And it is also a bridge between Western cultures and Eastern cultures. And we see that. People are coming because they perceive also this place as a neutral place. And we see great conversation between Chinese and Americans. Just to name few, I would say, leaders, because as you know, the dialogue is not always easy between these two countries. So this is why we have a very positive and I would say collaborative discussions. But back to your point about the impact on humanity, which is in fact the answer to how investment can be a force for good. So it requires a strategic approach, I would say, but the way you measure a long-term impact is how investment, for example, in sustainable development are happening, in renewable energy, in sustainable agriculture, in green infrastructure. And this can help to combat climate change. So this is, I would say, one first areas where you can have an impact on humanity when you convey the positive forces to invest in sustainable development. Definitely, you can measure also by social impact. So impact investing has gained traction, where investors, I would say, actively seek to generate positive social and environmental outcomes. And at FII Institute, as you know, 3 years ago, we decided to create a new ESG framework because we were considering that the current one was not fair and was excluding emerging countries. We were a little bit provocative by changing totally the ESG framework, what I'm calling my ESG 2.0 new framework. And if investors adopt this new ESG framework, and it is happening, it could unlock almost $3 trillion of new investment in Asia and probably $1 trillion of investment in Africa. So we see investment in sectors like healthcare, education, affordable housing, clean water. This has a direct impact on quality of life, which means impact on humanity.
And I think that's an interesting point. Some of the topics you're bringing up.
And then just one last point, if you allow me, which is you can measure this impact on humanity by the number of job creation and economic growth in some region. And this is easily to measure without saying diversity and inclusion. So this is how we can impact our humanity.
And it feels like some of the topics you've brought up there and some of the players who are now taking part is really reflective of the power shift that we're seeing in global trade and economy. It feels like we're moving away from the G7 much more to the E7, where, you know, players like Saudi, the UAE, India, Japan and Turkey are really starting to have a name on the global stage. And I feel like that's being reflected at FII, particularly this year. So let me tie that in, because almost all of the events that you've been associated with over the years, from not only FII, but also to the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, the Clinton Global Institute, and I could go on. All of these have become permanent fixtures on CEOs' calendars. Tell me, how do you go about creating an event that not only becomes a must-attend that decision makers do not want to miss out on, but how do you ensure that FII events also stand out from the crowd against other events such as the Clinton Global Initiative, for example?
You know, I think we have one point in common, Katie, which is everything we do it with passion. You cannot accomplish anything if you are not passionate by what you do. So as a civil engineer, I was supposed to build bridges. And instead, I realized at a very early stage of my life that my passion is people. So instead of building real bridges, I tried all my life to build bridges between people, between cultures, between communities, between countries. And this is why I was always involved on creating, producing platforms which potentially could have an impact. When the former President Clinton left the office, his team contacted me and he asked me, what can I do? And I told him, Mr. President, I don't know what you can do, but I know what you should stop to do. You should stop to deliver speeches every week, because even if it's a great financial contribution, you are an icon. And you have the power to convey people and to be a game changer. And this is how was born the Global Clinton Initiative. And it was, and it is still a platform where people commit, where people are supporting. It is now becoming the best place for NGOs to regroup. So back to your question, what is the secret of building influential platforms? I would say this is exactly the secret lies in understanding that FII, for example, is more than just a conference. You have to design these platforms as platform for action. You know, CEOs and leaders are not just looking for networking opportunities. They are seeking insight. They are seeking inspiration. They are seeking collaboration of the most pressing issues of our time. So this is what we are trying to create. And I think our program brings together visionary thinkers, game changers, innovators to discuss solutions, to share ideas, to spark new partnerships. And this is what I'm trying to do. And this is probably one of the reasons why we will be welcoming soon 7,000 plus people in a few days. And people are already, thanks to our app, booking thousands of bilateral meetings. And we can see that because we started just a few days ago to open that networking possibilities to our stakeholders. And I see the volume is literally exploding. People need to talk. People need to be inspired. People want to exchange ideas. And people want to be optimistic. You know, despite the half-empty glass that the media always highlight, because this is what is making news, there is another half-empty, full glass that people want to discover. And this is what we're trying to achieve. And this is what is my passion. And this is, I will never renounce on putting people together, creating dialogues, because this is how you find solution to the main issues that we have, including the conflicts which are surrounding us currently.
And I want to pick up on what you've mentioned there about the conflicts we're seeing in the region, because the conference is taking place against the backdrop of very quickly escalating tensions across the region. What kind of impact does this have on the talks that leaders are having this week? And where do you see the major challenges and opportunities that the world is facing at this point in time?
You know, there is a very interesting point, Katie. We saw that even last year, our conference was happening just after the dramatic October 7, I would say, catastrophe. I was expecting people to maybe pull out, not attend. It was the opposite. Everybody came. And they wanted to have this conversation. They didn't talk about politics at all. And one of the main reasons is because also FII is not a political platform. But on the side, you can always expect to have people talking about politics. It was not the case. It's not because people are underestimating what is happening. It's not because people are not interested by what is happening. It's not because people are ignoring. I would take an expression that we always say in the entertainment industry: the show must go on. They want to continue to be optimistic because they know that it's only by building prosperity that you will bring peace. It's only by investing in these regions that you will fight against terrorism. And it's only by sending a message of optimism that you will show that our world is extremely resilient. And it's also a message to politicians, which is probably, it's my own interpretation. Us, private sector, will continue to do what we have to do for the benefit of our employees, for the benefit of our citizens, for the benefit of our countries. And you know, I will go back to the FII Priority Compass, the survey that we are releasing in a few days. To the question, are you happy in your life? Are you happy with the direction that your country is taking? And are you happy with the direction that the world is taking? You see 60% of the people who are almost happy with the direction of their own life. Only 23% are happy with the direction that their own country is taking, which is 2/3 are unhappy, and 25% on which direction the world is taking, which is 75% are unhappy and concerned by the direction that the world is taking. So you see this, I would say, contradiction between what people are expecting and what some world leaders are potentially doing. But the humanity is extremely resilient, trust me. We saw that after COVID-19, and this is why this global conversation is happening. I think ultimately, we will see the lights at the end of the tunnel. I am convinced of that. And we will build and continue to build a sustainable world.
Well, I know you said you don't typically talk politics at FII, but it is also being held just days before the US elections on November the 5th. You've got a big presence coming from the US, as always. For many Americans are visiting Saudi for the first time. Tell me, what is their sentiment you're seeing from US speakers and guests this year? And what are your personal predictions for the US election?
You know, FII became a global platform beyond the annual conference happening in Riyadh. We host every year now an FII in Miami in February. So past February, we hosted a session, which was a door-closed conversation, asking what do you think will be the economic consequences, because this is our purpose, the economic consequences of the US election results. So very interesting conversation. And of course, now it's obvious that you have one candidate which will take some measures to help investment, to reduce taxes. This is not new because everyone knows the program of the former President Trump, and everyone is expecting what Kamala Harris will do because she will probably continue to do what the current President Joe Biden is doing. But these conversations are happening more in the angle of geoeconomics post-US election. Now, about prediction, you know, I spend a lot of my time in New York. Home is New York. it's extremely, extremely difficult today to predict who will win. And the reason is very simple. When you talk to people, for the first time, you see many people who are not telling you the truth. They are not telling you if they will vote for President Trump or if they will vote for Kamala Harris. It's very strange feeling. You have some people, you know they are Republicans in their blood, but you guess that they will not vote for President Trump this time. At the opposite, you see some people, you know they are Democrats, because in America, everyone usually says, oh, this is who I am. At the opposite of Europe, where people never say for who they vote. And you see some Democrats who are for the first time ready to vote for President Trump because they are more looking at their financial interests than others. And then the question we can ask is, what will be the impact of what is happening globally in the world with this uncertainty in Russia, Ukraine, in the Middle East, and many other regions? The world is extremely fragile in terms of stability, and many people will vote with probably one wish, which is we will hope that our candidate will bring stability to the world. So, frankly speaking, extremely complicated to predict what will happen.
Well, November the 5th now just days away. But let me ask you about some of your satellite events. As you mentioned, you have the flagship taking place in Saudi, but a number of other locations now too. You mentioned Miami, there's also London, Hong Kong, Rio for the first time ever this year as well. And I think it's interesting because it shows the cross-dialogue that is taking place between Saudi and other nations all over the world. So how are the events that are being organised by FII globally, how are they benefiting the Saudi economy? And how do you choose your specific locations?
First of all, back to your point, beyond FII, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is definitely now a place where global conversations are happening on multiple industries, on mining, on the future of aviation, on the future of logistics, on the future of technology, and so far and so on. Why that? Because you have an amazing program, a vision called Vision 2030. And if people read very well Vision 2030, they understand that this country is in full transformation, creating amazing sectors which are contributing to the diversification of the economy. And the kingdom is moving from being an oil producer economy to a very diverse economy. So all these platforms are becoming the global conversations on all these sectors which are supporting the diversification of the economy. And this is how Saudi leads. And people are very happy to come here because it reminds me what happened in China 20 plus years ago when China moved from almost a country which was one single economy to an open global economy. Now, back to your point about FII expansion. Yes, we are a global membership organization and we have members from all over the world. And we have strategic partners and all of them, we are listening to them because it's our duty. And we see many of our members say, hey guys, we cannot always come to Saudi Arabia. And we know many friends who cannot come because they are busy in October or sometimes it's expensive to buy a ticket to come to Riyadh, long way to go there. So we decided to go also to our members' regions, continents, and countries. This is why we will have an FII, I would say, satellite event, what we call FII Priority Summit, in each continent, on each continent. So we have in the United States every year, Miami, because it's a very vibrant society, vibrant city. What is happening in Miami currently is amazing in all sectors, and they will host the World Cup soon also. We are in Latin America probably every 2 years. We started with Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the largest economy of Latin America. In 2025, we have decided, of course, to go back to Miami, especially after the US election. Very important moment to see what will happen in February 2025. But we'll go in Europe. Europe should not be ignored. Europe is in full transformation. Europe is facing many challenges. So we want to have a global conversation in Europe probably in May or June. We are hosting, as you know, in Riyadh, the conversation about Africa, and probably we'll go 2025 in African countries. We got already many invitations to go to some countries in Africa. And we will go back to Asia. every 2 years. So we are exploring with the board what could be the best destination in Asia. We started with Hong Kong. We were the first economic conference post-COVID-19, and we're exploring other countries, which will contribute to this global conversation on diversification of the economy, of the next-gen expectations, on also from where the growth will come in some specific region in Asia. So yes, we are global, and we'll continue to be global, to be sure that we are hosting conversation, which include all our members, and to offer to our members also the opportunity to meet and discover other regions, other geographies, and from where the next big champion leaders will emerge.
So clearly big conversations going on when it comes to technology, AI, robotics, the digital transformation that we've mentioned, in addition to these global discussions on the economy and the environment too. But tell me, what do you envision as the role of FII in really defining the future of global leadership, particularly in the Middle East, in this part of the world?
It's a very interesting question. You know, today, to contribute to that, you need to understand what are the challenges that world leaders are facing, including business leaders. I would say they are concerned when we talk to them by the economic uncertainty. You know, they are concerned about inflation, rising interest rates, potential recession are at the forefront, I would say. Supply chain disruptions, fluctuating energy prices, geopolitical tensions. So climate change and sustainability, when you see the floods which happen everywhere now, everywhere, not a single part of the world is excluded from massive floods, you know. So in Paris and in some region in France recently were totally underwater. What happened in Florida, what is happening in Brazil. And they are also not concerned, but they are asking questions about digital transformation, AI. How should I manage? How should I educate my workforce? How can I accelerate the acquisition of skills to be integrated in this rapid advancements in technology, especially, as you say, artificial intelligence? And so this workforce transformation, plus if you add on the top of that now, healthcare and well-being, because it is becoming an important priority. And if you look at social issues like social inequality, diversity, you feel that you have a mandate to create this conversation to help world leaders to get the answers. And this is what is our contribution. This is why we want to be global, because by addressing, you know, as someone who spent many years learning mathematics, our teachers were always telling us, guys, when you put the equation on the table, it's almost half solved. So this is why I think that by having unexpected conversation in total transparency, where people who are sometimes having a separate visions, separate approach, is helping to solve the problem. And when people come with solutions and actions, definitely the question after is implementation. But we see more and more leaders now who are changing their mindset. They don't want just to be visionary leaders or dreamers, to quote his Royal Highness the Crown Prince, who said that one day on stage. He said, this place is a place for dreamers and doers, talking about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I think this is what FII is about. FII is a global conversation where you see many dreamers who are doers.
And it's certainly been a very interesting opportunity to shine that spotlight on Saudi Arabia. But you're in quite a unique position because you've been working with Saudi organizations for, the last 20 years or more. In fact, from the time you were at the Publicis Group, how would you describe your experience? And frankly, what is your advice in terms of being able to manage the changing priorities and shifting deadlines at the intensity that such a huge event like FII must face?
You know, I think I'm not someone who knows everything. It would be too pretentious. But what I see today is that when you include in your conversations trying to find solutions, bring unexpected persons around the table. Don't deal always with the same usual suspects. Bring some young people from your organization. Bring more females in your conversation, more women. Bring the people who are quite low in the hierarchy of your organization. Don't have board meetings only with the top 10 executives of your organization. I was so privileged and so lucky to be given the opportunity when I was 29 years old to be appointed as a global CEO of a company. In that time, it was a computer leasing company by the shareholders. And I was obliged to jump in the swimming pool and to dive and to swim and to manage people who were in their 40s. So this was by far the best MBA that I had. So my advice, based on my 40 years of past experiences, number one, you need to acquire very quickly a global culture. We live in a global world, and this is not going to change. So we need to have a global culture to understand the differences between cultures, including in this part of the world, which is full of opportunities, but has a very strong culture. So don't come here to do business in 24 hours to take the money and run. It's not going to happen. And you know that. You live in Dubai, you saw the growth of the UAE, and this GCC region is full of opportunities, but we need to respect the culture. We need to respect the vision, and we need to build trust. This is a second important advice. Trust is extremely important. You cannot do any business in the world, and in particular in this part of the world, if you don't build trust. So be inclusive, be global, acquire global culture, build trust, and extremely important also is you need today to acquire some skills related to technology, because technology is everywhere and technology is disrupting all industries. If you don't include AI and technology, if you're in your business, all businesses, you will be out of business quite soon. And this is really remind me what I learned in 1993, 1986. You were probably not even born when I started IBM, working for IBM. And it was the new era of personal computers. And I was seeing many people resisting. They didn't want to have personal computers changing their day-to-day work. Come on, what can you do today without a personal computer or even without a cell phone, which will control almost your day-to-day business? But last point, don't lose and don't compromise with your values. Ethics, extremely important in business. Humanity, extremely important. You need to love people. Whatever you are doing, you need to look at how you do it for good. So this is extremely important. And last but not least, be always open to discover other approaches, other methods. We need to have this form of humility to really be always listening to others and be inclusive. I think this is what I learned, from my years of working, my years of total humility, advising some world leaders, because this is also what I was doing for years and years, on how they can and they should diversify their economies, attract foreign direct investment, because this is how you can create jobs and build inclusive economies. And last but not least, this is how you brand a nation. Because a nation today is like any corporation. You have to attract investors. You have to make your citizen proud of being a citizen of your country. You need to attract the media to say good things about you and not only the bad things. You need also to build trust with all the stakeholders, exactly the challenges that a brand has to build with the clients. So this is why branding nation is a very important exercise and should be a priority for all world leaders.
You've got a huge week ahead of you with FII. I know you're expecting $28 billion worth of deals to be signed as a result of the event as well. So busy week ahead. Thank you very much for making time for us. We wish you the best of luck with FII and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you for having me, Katie. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.